World number one Aryna Sabalenka is still in the headlines from the WTA season ender in Riyadh after she apparently threw shade towards the champion Elena Rybakina after the final.
Aryna Sabalenka just lost to Elena Rybakina at the WTA finals, and cameras caught her saying something that got interpreted as a Russian idiom basically calling Rybakina lucky. The internet exploded. People started bringing up all her other controversial moments. And now everyone's debating whether she's a poor sport or just being unfairly criticized. Have you ever watched an athlete get criticized for being emotional after a loss? When male athletes do the same thing and nobody cares? Let me know in the comments.
After losing to Elena Rybakina 6-3, 7-6 at the WTA Finals, Aryna Sabalenka was understandably very emotional. And after she smashed her racket, shook Rybakina's hand, the camera caught Aryna saying something in frustration, which one fan through lip reading interpreted as "once a year, even a stick shoots." So this apparently is a Russian idiom, which essentially means the same thing as "even a blind squirrel finds a nut once in a while." And Aryna said the same exact thing, "once a year, even a stick shoots," back in 2023 during the US Open final against Madison Keys after the American bageled her in the opening set.
So Aryna Sabalenka lost to Elena Rybakina 6-3, 7-6 at the WTA finals, and she was understandably emotional about it. After smashing her racket and shaking Rybakina's hand, cameras caught her saying something in frustration. A fan who apparently can read lips interpreted it as a Russian idiom that translates to "once a year even a stick shoots," which is basically the Russian version of "even a blind squirrel finds a nut once in a while." For those who don't speak idiom, that's basically saying Rybakina got lucky, that she doesn't usually play this well, but once in a while even average players have good days, which is pretty insulting considering Rybakina is a Wimbledon champion and absolutely not an average player. But Sabalenka was frustrated, and this is apparently something she says when she's upset about losing.
Depth. Serve was just phenomenal tonight. Really condensed the amount of unforced errors too, but just from start to finish, the way that she played to win, directed traffic, hit every ball, just so impressive, Kevin.
Yeah, and for Aryna Sabalenka, you can see how demoralizing this loss is. I mean, Sophie, she got picked apart early. Rybakina came with her A++ game, and Sabalenka had to play from a deficit for the remainder of the match.
Well, they should have given her the trophy at the start. I mean, if they knew what was going to follow, it was just, you know, I guess it was a dream performance that...
She said the exact same phrase during the 2023 US Open final against Madison Keys, after Keys won the first set. So this is a pattern with her. When she loses or is losing to someone she thinks she should beat, this idiom comes out. It's her way of processing the frustration, basically saying, "Why did they choose today to play well against me?" Here's the thing though, Rybakina didn't just randomly play one great match against Sabalenka. She had been playing strong tennis throughout the entire tournament, leading up to the final. This wasn't a fluke performance. This wasn't luck. Rybakina earned that win by playing consistently excellent tennis for multiple matches. So Sabalenka's frustration about "why me, why now?" doesn't really hold up when you look at how Rybakina had been playing all week. But the internet being the internet, this moment went viral and Sabalenka started getting dragged. People called her a poor sport. Her own fans criticized her, and people started bringing up all her other controversial moments from this year. The whole Roland Garros press conference situation with Coco Gauff, the Australian Open final, where she smashed her racket on court, the incident in Wuhan where she threw her racket a little too close to a ball kid during her semi-final loss to Jessica Pegula.
World number one, Aryna Sabalenka continues to receive backlash from tennis lovers worldwide for her comments after Saturday's French Open final defeat to Coco Gauff. The Belarusian was not only critical of her own performance, but seemed to belittle the efforts of the champion.
So now there's this narrative building that Sabalenka is a sore loser who can't handle defeat gracefully. And look, is she the most gracious in defeat? No, absolutely not. She's emotional, she's volatile, and she wears her feelings on her sleeve. But here's the controversial take. That's fine. Players don't have to be gracious losers. They're allowed to be upset when they lose. And here's the even more controversial take. If Sabalenka was a man, she wouldn't be getting half the criticism she's getting right now. Male tennis players smash rackets all the time. They yell, they curse, they say things in frustration. And while they sometimes get fined or criticized, it's nowhere near the level of scrutiny female players face for the same behavior. Someone on Twitter made a great point. The expectation that a tennis athlete should always take tough losses on the chin and not be upset at themselves or make negative remarks out of frustration is just really inhumane and not normal. And that's accurate. We expect athletes to be superhuman in their emotional control, to always say the right thing, to never show real feelings. But that's not realistic. People are not empathetic enough when it comes to athletes in high-pressure situations. These players are competing at the highest level, dealing with massive expectations and processing losses in real time while cameras are in their faces. Of course, they're going to say things they might regret later. Of course, they're going to be emotional. That's human. What's also worth noting is that Sabalenka didn't say this publicly. She wasn't at a press conference making these comments. She wasn't posting on social media. The camera happened to catch her in a private moment of frustration, and someone lip-read what she said. That's completely different from publicly trash-talking an opponent. Should poor sportsmanship be called out? Yes, when it's actually poor sportsmanship. The Roland Garros press conference thing with Coco was legitimately questionable. That was a public moment where she made comments that were unnecessary. But this situation with Rybakina, this was a private moment of frustration that got caught on camera. There's a difference. It's also worth comparing how Sabalenka gets treated versus how male players get treated for similar or worse behavior. Daniil Medvedev, for example, has done far worse things on court and doesn't get nearly the amount of criticism that Sabalenka gets. He's literally screamed at umpires, destroyed equipment, and had multiple meltdowns. But somehow that's seen as competitive fire, while Sabalenka's frustration is labeled as poor sportsmanship. The double standard is real, and it's frustrating to watch female athletes are expected to be perfect role models who never show negative emotions, while male athletes get a pass for the same behavior or worse. That's not fair, and it's worth pointing out every time it happens. Someone made an interesting observation that Sabalenka is really only okay with losing to Iga Swiatek. Not that she's happy about it, but she seems to accept losses to Iga as somewhat inevitable given how good Iga is. But when it comes to other players, Sabalenka expects to win every match, and when she doesn't, the frustration comes out. There's probably some truth to that. Sabalenka has reached a level where she sees herself as one of the absolute best players in the world, which she is. So when she loses to anyone other than the handful of players she considers equals, it feels like a failure. That mindset probably contributes to the emotional reactions we see. But here's what's also true. Sabalenka is dealing with pressure that most people can't imagine. She's expected to win every tournament. She's criticized when she doesn't. Her finals record is 21-19 overall, which is not great for someone of her caliber. That's a lot of big matches lost, and each one probably weighs on her. The criticism she gets for her emotional reactions probably makes it worse, creating a cycle where the pressure builds and the reactions get more intense. Despite falling short in the WTA finals, Sabalenka did make history this season. She won $15 million in prize money, setting a new WTA single-season prize money record that surpasses Serena Williams' record from 2013. So while she didn't win every big match, she still had an incredibly successful season by any measure. The controversy around this moment also raises questions about privacy for athletes. Should cameras be filming players in what are essentially private moments? Should fans be lip-reading and publicizing things that players say to themselves or their teams? Where's the line between public figure accountability and basic privacy? Athletes are under surveillance basically all the time. Everything they do, every expression they make, every word they say can be captured and analyzed and turned into content. That's an incredible amount of pressure, and it probably contributes to the emotional outbursts we see. Players can't even have a moment of private frustration without it potentially becoming a viral controversy. The comparison to the Roland Garros situation with Coco Gauff is interesting because that was actually a legitimate issue. Sabalenka made comments in a press conference that were unnecessary and put Coco in an awkward position. That deserved criticism because it was a public statement that crossed a line. But this Rybakina situation is completely different. One was public commentary, the other was a private moment caught on camera. The fact that people are conflating these two situations shows how narratives can spiral out of control. Sabalenka makes one legitimately questionable comment, and now everything she does gets interpreted through that lens. Every emotional reaction gets added to a growing list of evidence that she's a problem, even when the individual incidents don't really support that conclusion. It's also worth noting that emotional reactions after losses are often a sign of how much something means to someone. Sabalenka cares deeply about winning. She's devastated when she loses big matches. That's not a character flaw, that's passion. The same passion that makes her one of the best players in the world is the same passion that leads to emotional reactions when things don't go her way. Would we prefer athletes who don't care? Who lose and shrug it off like it doesn't matter? Of course not. We want athletes who are invested, who care, who give everything they have. But then we criticize them when that investment shows through emotional reactions. It's a no-win situation for the athletes. The idiom itself is also worth examining. Once a year, even a stick shoots is obviously dismissive of the opponent's performance. But it's also a way of processing a loss that feels unexpected. Sabalenka probably did think she should win that match. When she lost, her brain immediately went to explanations. Rybakina must have had an unusually good day. This doesn't happen often. It's not sustainable. These are all ways of protecting the ego after a tough loss. Is it respectful to the opponent? No. But it's also not meant for public consumption. It's a private thought expressed in a moment of frustration. Everyone has uncharitable thoughts about opponents or competitors. Most people just don't have cameras catching those thoughts and fans lip-reading them. The social media pile-on that followed is also predictable but unfortunate. Once something goes viral, nuance disappears. Context doesn't matter. Everything becomes black and white. Sabalenka is either completely in the right or completely in the wrong, with no room for the reality that this is a complicated situation where reasonable people can disagree. What's also frustrating is how this overshadows Rybakina's victory. She played fantastic tennis throughout the tournament and earned that title. But instead of the conversation being about her excellence, it's about Sabalenka's reaction. That's not fair to Rybakina, who deserves recognition for her performance. The tennis world's reaction to this has been mixed. Some people defend Sabalenka, pointing out the double standards and the invasion of privacy. Others think she needs to control her emotions better and show more respect for opponents. Both perspectives have valid points, but the discourse has become so polarized that actual conversation is difficult. So Aryna Sabalenka got caught on camera saying something dismissive about Elena Rybakina after losing. And now everyone's debating whether she's a poor sport or just being unfairly criticized for showing emotion. The double standards are real, but so is the need for basic sportsmanship. If you have thoughts on this controversy, hit that like button and subscribe for more content.